This week's study hall is being held in the desolate post-apocalyptic wasteland known as Pittsburgh, the setting of The Last of Us. Hello there, I'm Max Scoville, and welcome to Max Scoville's Study Hall. This is the show where I take a particular video game that you may or may not be excited about and recommend some supplementary non-video game forms of entertainment that may or may not go along with that game. Today the game is The Last of Us. If you haven't been keeping track, The Last of Us follows Joel, a hardened old tough guy tasked with escorting a young girl named Ellie through the post-apocalyptic wasteland as they're forced to fight off other desperate survivors, as well as humans infected with super gross brain funguses that cause the apocalypse. Jeez, you guys, video games are so corny, right? A parasitic brain fungus that infects organisms and takes control of their actions? Where do they come up with this stuff? From real, actual science. The spooky brain mushrooms in The Last of Us are based on Cordyceps, a genus of endoparasitoid fungi which got some attention a few years back when they were shown on BBC's Planet Earth Nature series, taking control of an ant and making it, well, climb stuff. That's really all it was doing. More recently, there was an image floating around of a tarantula infected by Cordyceps so badly that it looked like it had antlers. And I would show you that image, but I don't even want to look at it myself. So if you're feeling brave, go Google image that and then have fun with the night terrors and your bed being filled with pee. Now, super gross brain mushrooms are great and all, but a lot of what's interesting about The Last of Us is how normal human beings behave after society crumbles. It's something that's frequently addressed in zombie fiction, but I know a lot of people are tired of zombies, so I'll spare you. Besides, you know what's much scarier than a lawless wasteland populated by the Walking Dead? A lawless wasteland populated by nothing but women. I'm kidding mostly. But that's the exact premise of Y: The Last Man, Brian K. Vaughn's widely acclaimed comic series. A virus wipes out every single mammal with a Y chromosome except for one guy and his pet monkey. I will spare you spoilers, but in addition to being a really smart look at one quasi-possible post-apocalyptic scenario, Y is also a lot of fun. It's got some sad parts and some serious parts, but it's also just a really great adventure story, and you will not regret checking it out. You'll have a great time. In fact, a movie of Y: The Last Man is currently in the works with Revision 3 alumnus and Totally Rad Show host Dan Trachtenberg in the director's chair. Dan, don't mess it up, please. I really love this series. Speaking of movies, that brings us to our next topic, movies! One that's definitely in the same vein as The Last of Us is The Road, based on the Cormac McCarthy novel of the same name. This has a very similar premise to the game. A weathered grizzly man, Viggo Mortensen, must escort a child, his son in this case, through crumbled America. The difference is The Road is set in a post-apocalypse caused by some kind of environmental disaster that's killed off all the plant and animal life, meaning that the few people left are forced to scrounge for food or resort to cannibalism. I wish I could say, go watch The Road, you won't regret it, except it's very possible that you will regret it. It is a haunting, scarring, upsetting nightmare of a movie. Of course, it's also really good, but for your own sanity, you should probably make sure that you have either a bottle of whiskey or a basket of adorable live kittens on hand for afterwards, because you're gonna need one of the above. Possibly both, though that could get messy. Moving on, let's talk about some books. Now, I can't speak to the novel The Road is based on, it's supposed to be really good, but one post-apocalyptic novel I can recommend is Stephen King's The Stand. While a lot of apocalyptic fiction starts out after everything's all messed up, The Stand starts off with a teensy little mishap involving some very dangerous biological weapons, and then follows that mishap step by step as it decimates most of the population. And then it follows the handful of survivors doing stuff, and then it gets really, really weird. The Stand was adapted into a TV miniseries in 1994, and Marvel Comics just adapted it into a 6-volume graphic novel series that concluded last year, but neither of those even remotely hold a candle to the book. Now, considering that it's almost 1,500 pages long and it's basically just a cube, I can understand how the book might be a bit daunting for some people. But there's also an unabridged audiobook version, which I actually listened to a few years ago when I had a really boring job scanning medical records, and it kept me entertained for almost an entire pay period. Now, while we're on the subject of stuff you can listen to, it can be hard to find good post-apocalyptic music. The story trailer for The Last of Us used the very appropriate Hank Williams song, Alone and Foresaken, and of course there's that amazing Johnny Cash song, The Man Comes Around. One lesser-known musical gem I stumbled on is the Dead Flag Blues by the experimental/ambient post-rock group Godspeed You, Black Emperor. I'm not going to try and describe a song to you guys, because it's a song, it's just a thing you're supposed to listen to, but you can go grab that album on iTunes. It's called F Sharp, A Sharp, Infinity, and I highly recommend it. It's very dark and weird. Anyway, these are just a few of my personal post-apocalyptic recommendations for you guys if you're antsy for The Last of Us. If you're curious about any of the stuff I mentioned, I've got it all written down in the video description below, and if you've got some suggestions of your own, by all means, drop them in the comments below, whether it's suggestions for stuff to people to check out for The Last of Us, or ideas for me to do a stupid show on. Oh, there's the bell. You guys know what time it is. I will see you guys back here next week when we're going to talk about the women of cyberpunk and remember me. In the meantime, I'm Max Scoville, and hopefully if the world ends, it'll be with a bang and not with parasitic brain funguses. Ugh.